your host, Cody Retlick, and very excited today. Been fortunate enough to work with in the past, collaborate on some projects. She's an author, she's a writer, she's a photographer with a lot of experience in a lot of different areas. So, Kara, I appreciate you being on the podcast today. So, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Cody.
Yeah, when I was originally trying to find more cool people doing cool stuff in the industry, definitely thought of your name because you have some amazing photography skills. You've been doing photography for quite some time, right? Like 15 plus years that you've been taking photos.
I started in 2009 at Coachella of all places. So,
Nice.
yeah, it's been about 15 years, and this July it'll be a decade doing drone stuff.
Awesome. What a spot to start photography. What made you pick that as kind of your start?
Well, I used to work in music tech, and I went to a lot of live shows, and my foray into photography happened by accident, much like my foray into drones. I was at Coachella with some friends. A friend in our group, his company was doing all the beverages for the VIP section of Coachella. So for all the musicians, the talent, and their people. And so we were in the VIP section and pretty close to the stage. And I had a Canon Power Shot. It was one of those point and shoots with a zoom lens camera. And there was a music blogger there. And she said, "Oh, yeah, you should take some pictures." It didn't occur to me to point my camera at the stage. I was just taking pictures of our friend group and being one of those girly girls. And then uh, I took some photos and she liked them so much that she published them. And then she invited me to go along with her to Wanderlust Music Festival. Now, at this point, I needed an actual DSLR camera body and some decent glass. And thankfully, I had some tech friends who were hobbyist photographers, so they didn't need their gear all the time. And they lent me a camera body, some lenses, and those photos turned out so well that Wanderlust licensed some of them and put them on their website. And I thought, you know what? I'm onto something. But more than just being onto something, I had so much fun being in the pit and also just capturing artists in their element, just capturing their expressions when they were emoting to the crowd, that I did this for several years. And for several years, it was a lot of fun. But it was also a side thing. So at the time I made this discovery, I was a digital marketing manager at a publishing company called Peach Pit Press. So they publish, if you've heard of Jeff Carlson or Richard Harrington, a lot of even Chase Jarvis, some of the bigger photographers, they published a lot of their tutorials and their books.
Cool.
But I had just come on, a friend had gotten me a job, and so maybe that was part of me picking up a camera. But around 2014, I don't want to say I was getting bored with live music photography, but I was going to these shows, I was taking these pictures. There were other people in the pit and they were getting similar pictures because we all had similar gear and we're standing in an area, and we only have so many different positions we can take and so many ways to angle our camera, especially when you're standing below the stage. And so a friend of mine, Nate Boltron, took this incredible top-down shot of Martha's Vineyard. And Nate is someone who's always ahead of the curve, and he's also a hobbyist photographer. So he did a lot of user experience stuff in tech, but when it came to him picking up a camera, some of these people that just do it for fun are a lot better than most of us. And
Right.
that's kind of incredible. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like, gosh, you could really, if you wanted to make a living doing this, you could. But he was just content being a hobbyist. But he had gotten his hands on the DJI Phantom One. I don't know if we all remember that.
Oh yeah.
It
Yeah.
did not have a camera on it. There was no first person view on the remote or anything. So he stuck a GoPro. He flew about 60 feet above ground level, and he just did this beautiful composition of the sand and the wave. And I thought, I want to do something like that. Like, that's something I haven't seen before, because you couldn't do that with a helicopter. The pushing down of whatever the pressure from the blades would just chop up the water. And so It turns out my friend Eddie Codell, who gave me one of my first gigs in the drone industry, I helped him run Flying Robot International Film Festival. He had a
Sweet.
Phantom, and so he lent it to me. I wrote him a check for $600 as a deposit because that's what it cost at the time. And I remember struggling with charging the batteries, and I rented a GoPro. Thankfully, I didn't put the GoPro on because on the third flight, I lost the drone.
Oh no.
And so
What happened
it
there,
only had
if you don't mind
16.
me asking?
You know what? I obviously didn't fly it in the city. I wasn't ready for that.
Mhm.
I think even before drone standards were established, common sense told me, you know what? My folks who live nearby live near this big open golf course, and there's, a big forest. There's a lot of space. I should try flying it there just in
Good
case
idea.
anything happens. And so because there was no first person view or anything, and whatever GPS, if it even existed, was very weak, it did not uh I lost sight of it. I thought I had sight of it 1 minute, but then it very well could have dropped out of the sky because I had a stopwatch on. But again, even if it has up to 6 minutes of battery life, that doesn't mean after 3 or 4 minutes that it might not just decide to land.
Right.
So I think in a state park somewhere, some bird has made a nest out of it. And so Eddie collected his money, got another one. And it took me a little while to work up the courage again to fly, but I then continued on with the DJI Phantom Vision 2 Plus. But it was being in Iceland in November of 2015, just being surrounded by beautiful scenery. I said, you know what? I've got to work up the courage to just get the drone up in the air. And that's where it started. Then Drones 360 magazine reached out to me about writing a column. And still back in 2015, this was when Section 333 was a thing. So I couldn't do anything besides write articles and help with Flying Robot Film Festival because Part 107 wasn't around yet. And I do remember I looked up Section 333 and it was like $10,000
Yeah.
and it involved lawyers and it was complicated. So when Part 107 came around in August 2016, that's when things started to take off. But that being said, I didn't get certified until January 2017. And it took being offered a big job to motivate me to just study up and bite the bullet, schedule my test, and go.
Gotta
So,
do it. Well, I think we're all glad that worked up the courage again to start flying again and know that things happen, especially back then when drones were really the wild, wild west in a lot of ways
yes.
of not being able to see what you're shooting or looking
Yeah.
at that first person view and understanding that, like, yeah, if it goes down somewhere, I have the Find My Drone or the GPS where I can go locate it, where you might
Yeah.
not have been able to grab it anyway out of that tree if that's where it landed. But I think it's great because on other episodes too, like everybody can know or pinpoint, right? Like you mentioned your friend that like you saw that one photo that like really just grabbed your attention and
Mhm.
also just took you to that next level in your head of like, all right, no, this is cool and this is what I want to do. So I think, it's great to hear even, that you as well have that in your mind of like, yeah, this is the exact moment that I knew that I wanted to start flying drones, which is super cool.
Yeah, because you could not get me in a helicopter or even a small plane. I will fly commercial, but I am scared of heights, which is
Really.
strange. So if I'm standing on the ground and it's the drone up there and it's an unmanned vehicle, I'm okay. But I will not go in a helicopter. So I couldn't have never gotten those aerial shots beforehand. Now I was able to strike up a friendship with George. Oh gosh, is his last name Steinbeck? I'm going to feel like such an idiot if I forget this. um, anyway, he is a National Geographic photographer, and he actually would put cameras on kites and just kind of fly the kite over with
That's
the
awesome.
camera. So he was the true pioneer of aerial photography.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, we became friends when for DP Review I covered his situation with he got the New York Police Department came after him for droning some of the burial sites and
Oh wow.
yeah, things that happen because of ridiculous overreach, and he was able to come out of it and get his drone back. But we all have those stories, I'm sure, too.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, yeah, you never know, even then, right? Back then, what really could or couldn't do, or what was going to happen, in some ways. But how did it kind of transpire to, you were flying, you were getting photos, like you were doing it really more at that time. Was it starting to be more? Was it a side hustle yet? Have you moved into it full time, or is it something that I know you had mentioned you were getting more of these writing gigs as well, right? For DP and others
So
that.
what started to happen in 2017 is I it became a full-time thing because I started consulting for Drone Deploy, and
Mm.
I helped build a lot of their online community. And then I would also have a lot of drone gigs on the side. And then people would just contact me asking to buy prints. And so I actually had had this moment where I had my first viral photo, and it was a top down of Lombard Street. And much like that musician who her song was featured in an Apple commercial, but she didn't have a website or her song uploaded, I had one of those moments as well where I didn't have a site selling prints, and hundreds of thousands of people loved this top down of Lombard Street. And I thought, oh, shoot, why didn't I have a print shop on my website? But that being said, between Drone Deploy, still writing for Drone 360, I had also written a few articles for Drone Life as well. I was able to carve out a full-time full-time as working in the industry in some aspects. I think very few people make it full-time as a remote pilot, and I tell people that all the time. I tell them, hey, you know what? It's great to have your license and to go out and do all these jobs and get all this imagery, but very few people actually make a full-time income. So I have a diverse stream of income. I have my investments. I have a few other clients I do social media for. I do some ghostwriting. I always have money coming in. So if any one thing goes away, I'm still paying my mortgage and all my other bills.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's what you have to do, right? Especially in
yeah.
today's world where there's so many ways to make additional streams of income, right? That
Hmm.
I get that a lot too. Is like, how do you become a full time pilot, right, or drone operator? It's like there's ways to do it, no doubt, but
Yes.
it's
Yes.
difficult, right? And you have to be able to one market yourself, sell yourself, but in a lot of ways find your niche in a way that you can build a stream. At the end of the day, it's just a tool, right?
Yes.
So ultimately, if you're only flying drones, like you're kind of then forced to not just be maybe in one niche, and you have to find certain areas that you can do writing, or you can do social media, or you can use ground photography with your drones, or
Yes.
being able to supplement your other areas of expertise, to
Mhm.
kind of expand your horizons in certain ways.
You have
uh
to be a business person,
yes.
and I don't think enough people get that. They just think, "Oh, well, I have a drone and I know how to use it, so now what?" And I see that a lot, and I say,
Mhm.
"No, you need to build relationships with
Yep.
people, and it needs to be authentic. It needs to be natural. And so when you have sources of income coming in and you're not desperate for money, then you're going to connect with a lot more people, and they'll think of you. So I turned down quite a few out of state jobs and even an international job because I raised my daughter and I'm here with her a lot. too.
Yeah.
So things could change for me in 5 years when she's off to college. But right now I'm working with what I have. I don't want to leave her with a nanny or anything. So I work with local companies on drone work. And then, yeah, everything else that I've learned over the years in my career, I apply that. And that's what's kept my business afloat. And that's why I get to determine my own hours and I decide. And I'm very particular about who I work with as well.
Yeah.
I don't care about promises of big money or, people will try to throw anything at you to try to get you to work for free or for stock options or something like that. And that
Mhm.
doesn't even appeal to me. I'm very pragmatic. But that
And
being said, oh, yeah.
sorry, I was just saying because you know what's important to you, right? I mean, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, like your family, your daughter, you being local, you working with the right people that ultimately you can connect with, or you understand that it's not just a money grab, or it's just not someone trying to, pawn off another drone pilot to go do a job for
Yeah.
$50, as we know that there's a lot of those companies out there that do that, right? So I think, props to you, because that's
Oh,
that's
yeah.
where you do see the success, right? Is being able to know your worth, and ultimately knowing that because you know your worth, that you can kind of charge and pick and choose and know exactly
Yes.
what is important to you as well. So
Well, and I've put my time in, for the past decade. I've navigated a lot of different areas. I've dealt with a lot of different personality types. I went from being in the music tech industry and tech industry in general, where everyone kind of had the same ideologies and the same, opinions on politics and whatnot, to something that's very diverse, people coming from all different types of backgrounds.
big
And
time.
so, yeah, I mean, I'm very respectful of everyone. I don't judge anyone on, what they believe. That's up to them. That's their life experience. But I tell people, when people ask, I say, you've got to put in the work. You've got to build authentic relationships. And sometimes you have to put in the time.
Yeah.
So I feel like I am equipped to write this book about about building relationships, especially through online communities, um,
Yeah. Tell
because
tell
I've
tell us a
seen.
little bit more about that.
Yeah,
So you're
so
are you teasing a book here for
I'm
us? You're
teasing
writing
my
this book.
very
Yeah.
first ebook. Yes, I've been working on
Awesome.
this for a while. It's a labor of love, but it's without revealing too much, because it is going to be useful. So it never occurred to me before entering the drone industry that, you can build a lot of relationships through participating in communities online.
Mhm.
But there's a certain way to do it. So it's not just for your benefit. I mean, you it's fun to have friends. Like, I went to Greece in 2022 and Sweden last year, and I stayed both times with friends that I had made in the drone industry and just people that
Nice.
I had connected with over the years. But I think there are a lot of things that people are doing well, and that's why their businesses have flourished. But then there's things that people have been doing wrong, and this is why they're not getting the work they wanted, or they just up and quit. And so things that happen on a public forum can stay forever. They can stick forever. And so this book, I want to guide people on how to use these forums properly to build their business, to build their network. But basically, your network is your net worth. That
Yeah.
is the message behind this. And so I'm going to go through a lot of real life examples, because I've seen some stuff and I'm
Nice.
just like, no, don't do that. Or yes, you should do that. And so it's going to be chock full of examples and do and don'ts and what have you. And yeah.
I love it. I think I mean, I've not heard of a book like that, which I think is a great, unique viewpoint and vantage on like how to, not necessarily just grow your business or grow your personal brand or grow your network, right? Like that's just like also like real life stuff, right? It's like being able to be real. My parents always said reciprocity is a real thing, right? Like
Yeah.
if you go into it more just being curious of other people and
Mm-hmm.
not always like, hey, what's in it for me, right?
Yes.
It's us, right? And like it might not come back full circle right away. It might not never come back, right?
And it
But
doesn't need to. You
it
should
does it
want to help.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, you should want to help people. You know
Yes.
what I
And
mean?
yeah, and ultimately that's the biggest thing, right? Is if you're real and you're not in it for that reason only, it'll always come back in some way or the other. And it just it's how the universe works, right?
Yes.
And building those real connections. So I that's great. I'll definitely be buying a copy of it because
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
you
I
know,
have my marketing plan in place. I plan on giving it out to people that I admire and respect. But I live by the 80-20 rule, and that is 80% of the time you're building other people up, you're helping promote whatever they're doing, and then 20% of the time you push out your own stuff.
love it.
But yeah,
That's
but you
that's
kind of
cool.
summarized it up. Maybe I need a byline from you on the book. I don't know. But you
Yeah,
summed it up. Yeah, like don't go in to these communities with an agenda and oh hey, I'm new here, I have no idea what I'm doing, and then just try to butter people up. That does not work. I've
yeah,
seen that time and again over the years, and I see the people who thrive and who do well and have the respect of the community because they're not only being useful but they're authentic people, and
yeah.
so authenticity is really the big thing here.
Yeah, I love that. And I think for me personally, I think one of the reasons why I'm probably not as active on those groups and maybe some of the people that are might listen to this episode as well are like, well, I'm scared, like the trolls and are like all these people are out there. It's like, well, if I say something wrong, like you mentioned before, it's always out there, right? But I
Yeah.
think if you go in it with, one being educated on what you're talking about and not being afraid to put yourself out there, but then just not also taking digs at people or understanding their viewpoints, right? Like always putting yourself in their shoes of like, okay, well, maybe this is someone brand new to the industry and they don't know, or they haven't done their research and they're taking the time to ultimately ask a question that may seem ignorant to some, but to others it's no dumb questions, right? And I think
Yes.
a lot of times, and if you've seen if you've seen our new commercial ad that we put out, we have a troll in it for that reason, because
Yeah.
I feel in the drone industry there are a lot of trolls out there on those forums. So having a guide like that to kind of navigate and how to be real and authentic and build that through that, I think that it's a great idea, and I'm looking forward to reading it.
Well, I will say this. If you want to make a statement or make an impact or grow, you got to develop a thick skin. That's the
Yeah,
unfortunate reality. So I've dealt with my share of trolls, but writing for DP Review for 5 years, you can't say anything to me right now that I haven't already heard. If I had $10 for every time someone called me a hack or, you should quit or what are you doing? Um, I could retire, but you know what? For me, and I'll say, I would say this in the book, so just a kind of a sneak peek, the only opinions you should care about are the people you respect. And also look at the people at the top of whatever sector in the industry. How do they behave? How do they conduct themselves? Not all of them are online or in communities, but trust me, they do have their own social media people or their interns or whatever that are monitoring these. So,
hmm
how do you want to present yourself? But also recognize that no one who's doing better than you is going to put you down.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. I
yeah,
love
people
that
who are
line.
doing well are not going to be rude or sarcastic or they're not going to insult you because they've got better things to do. So,
Yeah,
I think that's important to remember. Let the trolls be trolls. Let them be lame and stupid. I just had a woman comment on one of my photos in the women's group, like, I'm sorry, but that ice kind of creeps me out. The shapes look creepy. I didn't even respond. Like, I'm not even going to address that or give
yeah,
it the time of day because it's just such a dumb comment to make.
yeah,
And you also only have so much time and so much energy.
yep,
What are you going to focus on? Are you building your brand? Are you building connections? Are you learning, because as we know, the industry is evolving all the time. Are you doing that, or are you getting into fights with people that you don't even want to know in real life?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And half the time, are they real accounts? Are they real people? Are they just there
oh
with
yeah,
fake, burner accounts that are making those comments? But I agree, and I can't wait to read the book and
oh,
have it out there for sure.
oh, thanks, I appreciate that.
I would love to know a little bit more just because, people out there that are maybe photographers or, you've had more than one now photo go viral, I feel like. So now that kind of have seen that happen multiple times, how did you go about like doing the print shop and, being able to outsource that or like printing them
So,
directly? Like, can you talk a little bit
oh,
about that process? Just because I think people love to hear that stuff too, just like how you really turn that into that revenue stream for you.
So, right now I have some prints on Etsy. I still take a bulk of my orders though. I feel like a lot of people reach out on Instagram and they'll say, I want this. So, what I have is I have a pricing sheet and I stick to those prices. I don't give anyone a special discount unless I decide to have a sale. Like I'll have a holiday sale and I'll do 40% off. And I still make a profit, but I move a lot more pieces because people are shopping for the holidays and
Yeah.
whatnot. Now, right now I'm on Etsy, but that being said, my website provider, Squarespace, links in with Printique, who fulfills my orders. So I'm thinking of linking that up. And I look at the examples of people that I admire that do aerial photography and just sell art in general. And I see that they stick to limited editions, and I'm not there yet, but I would like to one day be one of those that says, you know what? Only twice a year for 3 days, I'm selling this many prints, and you either get it or you don't. And that would be Mark Maggiore, who's one of my favorite painters. So,
Love it. Yeah. I mean, it's a good way to build that buzz, right? And like that also that mindset of that limited discount or limited time access is a
yeah,
great marketing
yeah,
tactic in a lot of ways to get people interested and also keep them with you along for the ride of like, oh, I've got to wait for Kara to launch that next release, right?
yeah.
So I've seen success with that as well, in some areas, not myself, but other people doing that. So I think that's a great way to keep growing that side of your business as well. So, are you still writing currently other than your book? What are you up to today? Like what are your main focuses other than releasing this book?
Well, so when a new drone does come out, I'll review it for Pilot Institute. I will have to reconnect with Pro Video Coalition. I got so busy last year that I wasn't able to dedicate enough time, but they did reach out and make an offer. For a minute, I was writing about enterprise drone solutions, but it didn't end up working out in the end. And I think the biggest reason is I do not charge per word. I charge by the complexity of the article that's being written. And so, whenever I write for anyone, whether it's ghostwriting or whether it's something public where my name is on it, I tell people the same thing. I say, you know what, we're not going to charge by the word because I'm not going to puff out anything and make it longer than it needs to be like that. It's just not an effective pricing strategy. It's, you know what, how much research do I need to do? And to be quite honest, I'm not an expert in enterprise or public safety drones. I'm familiar with it. And I really admire someone like Sally French, the drone girl, who tackles all these different sectors, and she does it brilliantly. And she makes it easy for any of us to understand what's going on and keep on top of that. But what I like to do and what I've found that I need to do is focus on photography and videography, and to an extent, a lot of the laws that are being
Yeah.
passed. So a lot of the legal stuff too. I like getting into that as well. And me and the group called Michigan Coalition of Drone Operators are going to challenge a very big public university here
Uh-oh. Love it.
This year, yeah, it's in the works. Michigan is one of 16 states where the state makes the rules, not the local ordinances. And there's no local ordinances allowed here, but yet there are state parks and now the university, trying to make their own laws. And so we're going to challenge that, especially since I got cited, not cited, but I was warned by a cop to land my drone, even though I was in the right. So we have to set an example and push back if we have the resources to do so and educate people. So but those are my areas. And so I tell people all the time, stick with what you are passionate about and what you are
Mhm.
good at. Don't try to master everything because you're just going to stretch yourself really thin in certain cases. So
Big time.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a great lesson in a lot of ways. It's like, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? What can you see yourself doing every day, right? And I've said
yeah.
that a lot throughout, my podcasts or videos and things like that, where it truly does have a bigger impact, right? But kudos to you and the Michigan Coalition there too to kind of stand up for it, because I think that's what we need to do as an industry, because you have
Mhm.
others in the industry that are doing such amazing things as well, to kind of bring it from not an enterprise level to more of a drone pilot company, small to medium sized business type mentality, where regulations can get overwhelming for a lot of people in the industry.
Mhm.
And being able to sift through all the acronyms and all the organizations and the different types of laws and regulations for state by state versus city in some ways too, it can be a lot. So I'm sure we'll pay attention to that as that goes forward with you as well, because it's an important work, and I'm glad that you've been able to band together with some people to kind of stand up for what's right? Ultimately
Yeah.
in your state.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we're not going to get. I mean, if you looked at the Michigan Drone Pilot Forum, I posted a letter I got from one of the chancellors. Now, I heard you're going to have a fly in, and this is why we can't. And I thought, they're trying to intimidate us.
Mhm.
And now, but that letter gave us legal standing. So the weather was terrible anyway. But I said, you know what? If we don't stand up, then
Who
all these
will?
places and all these businesses are going to try it on
Yeah,
pilots. They're going to try to make their own rules where they can. And so, yeah, we really have to advocate for our industry whenever we can. So that's another, I guess you could say, big project in the works this year as well.
that's awesome. Well, cool. It sounds like you got a lot of stuff rocking and rolling, as you can kind of continue to keep, expanding your area of expertise in the industry and all around, which is great. Um, Yeah, and it's something that, I always admired it as well from your standpoint. You take beautiful photography, but you're not just doing that, right? You're doing all kinds of stuff for the industry, and with women's and drones too, and the other organizations that you write for and whatnot. So it's fantastic. At some point too, we'll have to get together and fly. We're only one state away. I feel
I
like we're so
know.
close, but it's that Lake Michigan is bigger than people think. So
It is. No, I mean, it would be a flight or a far drive, but you're absolutely right. There's no excuse. Oh, and if we wanted to put it into the podcast, his name is George Steinmetz, and he was a real pioneer of aerial photography. So he would attach cameras to kites and what have you, hot air balloons, and he really made that a thing because there's certain habitats where you can't have a small plane or a
Mhm.
helicopter. It would just disrupt everything. So I'd like to give a shout out to him because I think he's part of the reason that we are where we are too. And
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to put him in the show notes and put his
George
put his handle.
Steinmetz, though, God, I'm such a George Steinbeck. Duh.
Well, hey,
I remember
well,
his.
either way, we'll put the correct spelling in there,
Oh
and
yeah.
put it in there in the
Oh,
show
okay.
notes. So check him out.
Perfect.
And that's the thing, though, is like being able to be a pioneer in some ways, people recognize it, and
Yeah.
like yourself, you understand that it is it is a step forward for someone has to do it, like just what you're doing for the
Yes.
Michigan state of Michigan. So
Someone has to, and so I just say take calculated risks if you are a photographer and you're doing work. And calculated risks means don't break any laws, don't be reckless, don't put anyone else at risk. But um, a great example of a calculated risk, some friends and I um hiked out to this abandoned bomber in the middle of the night. We shot the Milky Way, so obviously no drones
nice.
involved, and drones weren't allowed anyway, and I couldn't get clearance, so I wasn't going to try. But it's a risky thing. When we got back and I posted some of my photos and stories, I had a few people say, "Oh, well, your gear could have been confiscated. I heard there's a Bigfoot type creature out there." And but hey, you gotta push your boundaries. And I say always be willing to learn, always be teachable, and be humble. I mean, I look up to a lot of people and continue to do so. And I'm flattered when people say, "Oh, you've inspired me, to start with drones," or "I love your work," and I say thank you. And but I also look like, what am I going to do next? How can I continually improve, and what can I do? And I think no matter what part of the drone business you are in, you not kind of need to adopt that mindset. How can I be better? And Rick Rubin, he's a music producer, but he's one of my favorite people. I read his book last year. He's also one of my favorite people to follow. Just has great philosophies. Like, competing with other people is vibrating on the lowest frequency. So just compete with yourself. Like, how can I be better at the end of this year than I was last year?
Yep, absolutely. And that's the thing is, like, don't be afraid to, leave that comment on someone that you enjoy your stuff, or reshare their videos, or post just anything, right?
Yeah.
And just even send them a DM of just like, "Hey, love your work, keep up the great stuff," right? It goes a long way to build that community, but to also just, understand that, like, you are watching, right? Like, you've helped people, and hopefully you can help more people by just leaving a nice note or whatever it is. I think I've said it before, but even in my personal Instagram bio, it's collaboration over competition, because I'm all about rather collaborating in some way than, it's like, "Oh, you're my competition," right? In the drone industry, I feel like we hear that so often. It's like, but am I, right? Like, we're in some ways you have to look at it as like we all have a goal, right? And we're all trying to get somewhere. But if we can get there faster together,
Yeah.
then that is the best way, right? So I think we share a lot of that same mindset in that
Yeah.
direction, right? And just idealism on how we go through our
Yeah.
career.
And I mean, it sounds idealistic for me to say, "Oh, well, there's plenty of work to go around for everybody." But I mean, I would say, yes, of course, there's competition. Businesses are competing with each other. We live in a capitalistic society. But whenever I see a business or person try to tear someone else or some other entity down, it's not a good look. Um, so I mean, unless they're doing something really unethical or illegal,
Yeah.
kind of keep it to yourself. But I don't, I've learned the hard way that you should not ever like say anything about someone or something that you wouldn't want said about yourself either.
Yep. Absolutely. A lot of good life lessons throughout this episode, I think, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
You just you live and learn when you're in this industry, that's for sure. And it is, but every industry is challenging. Everything is challenging. So,
yeah.
um,
I think we're just in one that, we were kind of, well, I was a little bit later than you, but around from the very infancy stages, right? In the beginning, where when a whole new industry kind of becomes, and there's a lot of entrants throughout the beginning, and as it continues to grow, right? You have to still take that mindset and realize that you can learn from a lot of people doing some amazing things, but then not waste time and energies on others that maybe are trying to tear you down. So
yeah.
that's
Yeah. Just
fantastic.
avoid it. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, is there anything else or that you wanna mention on the podcast, or if not, how can people reach out to you or connect, or where can they see your stuff? I know you're very active on social and Instagram mostly and whatnot, and Facebook's in the groups as well. But how can people reach out to you, and what are you looking forward to this year?
So karaemurphy.com, that is my website. And I'm actually in the process of working with a designer just for a little rebrand and a little revamp. But for what it is right now, the site has been functioning well, and I do get pitches and messages from people. And so there's a contact form there. You can contact me, and I do my best to answer everything that's not a troll, or you know what I mean, or that's serious. I'm also on Instagram at Kara E. Murphy, Kara. E as in Echo, Murphy. And that also karaemurphy.com. So that's where I also post some of my work. And so, yeah, check it out. I'm most excited this year about revamping my site, starting to blog with some of my personal thoughts, things that I could never publish. So, for example, I wanted to write an article for DP Review on, you can fly in national park area if you take off outside, but they said that was too controversial. They didn't want to deal with that. So I'm going to touch on some topics that maybe regular publications might, for legal reasons, might not want to talk about. But then also just writing my ebook as well, and just talking about a lot of my observations that I've made just working in this industry for a decade, but then just being heavily involved in online communities and just making connections. And some of the best friends I've ever made have been in this industry and have been a result of just sharing our passions together for this industry and our work. So yeah, the book and just keep continuing to build. Those are what I'm looking forward to most this year.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it and when it comes out, and keep following along, and hopefully we'll connect at one of these events here sometime soon. Or I feel like
Yeah,
we should just get like maybe a Midwest flight or meetup at some point too. I've always talked
yeah.
about doing that with some people. It'd be fun to find a central spot and go fly. But definitely be following along with everything. And yeah,
Yeah,
I appreciate.
Midwest drone meetup, and we could do it. Why
Right?
not? I mean,
Yeah.
even if it was in like a central meeting place like Chicago or something, which Chicago's one of of course I love urban aerial architecture. That's like my favorite genre of photography ever. So, of course I'd mention Chicago, but I'm sure Minneapolis, I've never been, but has some really cool structures as well.
Yeah.
But we should
Well,
definitely make that happen. Because, and I would finally say this, as important as it is to make these online connections with people and make online friends, meeting them in real life is really what it's about as well. And you get to know so much more about a person once you meet them. So when I was in Florida on my workcation, I made it a point to spend some time with Loretta Alcalay, who, if you don't know her, she is an aviation attorney. She was with the FAA for 3 decades, and she writes some brilliant stuff. Especially look for her articles in the Women in Drones magazine, because she is, we call her the legal eagle. I know that's cheesy, but she is. She knows her stuff. And then Joanna Steidel, who I think you should have on this podcast, because she has really carved out her own niche with the marine life. So just I got to meet her, and we got to hang out and fly a bit. But she does
sweet.
some brilliant work with whales and jelly. She's done some jellyfish footage recently, alligator. She's just really
That's cool.
has this process that just amazes me. Her patience and her dedication to safely and ethically capturing these creatures is great. But my favorite part, and especially at the conferences too, is just meeting all these people in real life finally, and just having that connection already.
Yeah, I feel like in the past 3.5 years, whatever it was, since, the world shut down, it's been more and more of people getting used to Zoom calls and being online versus actually meeting face to face. So I think, yeah, there is nothing more powerful than that connection in person, and you get the real life uh feelings with people and actually knowing them on a deeper level when you meet in person. So I 100% agree with that. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get to, if
Well,
anybody's listening, we want to do a Midwest, meetup, and anybody
yeah.
anybody from anywhere could come, right? We're not excluding anybody
No.
outside, but
No.
I think coming to the Midwest, we get some beautiful scenery too. Even like, northern Wisconsin, upper UP. I know you've been up there in
Oh,
the past,
yeah.
right? There's some beautiful spots as
Yeah,
well
the
up there to
UP is
fly.
great. Not the best cell service in a lot of areas, but
No.
it is beautiful for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. And as an aurora chaser as a hobby, the UP and I think Wisconsin, but heck, Minnesota. I mean, you guys probably have more clear skies than we do because we have the lake effect with the clouds. It's overcast half the time. So you can have like a spectacular storm coming through, but there's a blanket of clouds half the time covering it. So,
Yeah, I know, right? Being right by Lake Michigan, it's like we don't know half the time if it's gonna be nice or beautiful. Like
yeah.
a few weeks ago, it was like we had well, it was a month, like maybe a month and a half ago, we had like 18 inches of snow, and people right down by the water in Milwaukee, they had zero. It's like, oh, okay, that nice, but you never know what it'll do around the lake. But I know I need to get up to there as well, and
For
it
sure.
up to Michigan or to Minnesota and
Yeah.
fly. I've seen some awesome stuff up there as well. Well,
Yeah.
cool,
Well,
Kara. I really appreciate you being on the podcast today and sharing your story. And hopefully everybody can learn a little bit more about you throughout this episode. And you mentioned some amazing people as well to follow along with as well. So thanks again for being on. And yeah, if anybody again has any thoughts on the episode, still new to this, we're still less than 10 episodes in, so always helpful to share, comment, like anything, so we can understand who might be a good guest to be on next, and so how we can improve going forward. So thanks again, Kara, for being on, and
you're welcome.
uh hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
So you too.